This is going to be a full-length video on the musculoskeletal system, going into depth about everything that you need to know for your exams. The term musculoskeletal refers to the muscles and the skeleton that they're attached to, as they go hand in hand to support movement in the body. You have 206 bones in your body, all fused together by joints. But first, let's go over the main bones that you need to be aware of. This is commonly known as the skull, and although it's a part of it, this is called the cranium, and this protects the brain. Next up is your vertebrae, which makes up your spine. You have 33 vertebrae when you're born, which fuses into 26. So you have 26 bones, but 33 vertebrae. Let's move on to the rest of the body. So we've discussed the cranium and the vertebrae. Next up is the clavicle, also known as the collarbone. This is the sternum, which then connects to the rib cage. You have 12 pairs of ribs, or 24 individual. 3 main bones make up your arms: your humerus, your radius, which goes from your elbow to your thumb, and the ulna. The ulna is longer, but the radius is thicker. These lead down to your hands, where you'll find your carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. This is the pelvis, which connects to the femur. This is the longest bone in the body. This then connects to the tibia, which is the shin bone, and then the fibula. Also included in the leg is the patella, or kneecap. And finally your feet, which are made from tarsals, metatarsals, and phalanges. You have 5 types of bones. Your flat bones are your cranium, sternum, and ribs. Your long bones include your humerus, radius, ulna, femur, tibia, and fibula. Your short bones include your carpals and tarsals. A sesamoid bone is your patella, and an irregular bone is your vertebrae. The pelvis depends on how in depth you look at anatomy. Let's move on to the joints. You have 3 main types of joints. The first one being your fibrous joints. These are immovable joints that are made when bones fuse together. An example being that when you were born, your cranium isn't fully fused, but this fuses together using the fibrous joints. Number 2 is your cartilaginous joints. These are relatively flexible, and an example is your rib cage. The final one is your synovial joints. These are the most common joint, and they are flexible and movable. All synovial joints have cartilage, providing them with cushioning between the bones that they are joined with. They also have a synovial capsule, which contains synovial fluid. Here is an example. Pause here to have a look. Let's move on to your muscle tissues. A muscle tissue is a specialized soft tissue that is classified into 3 main types. First up is the cardiac muscle, also known as the myocardium, and these are involuntary contractions as we don't control our heartbeat, and it allows continuous, rhythmic, and tireless contraction, because we'd be in big trouble if our heart got tired. Next up are your smooth muscles, which are also involuntary. They are non-striated, meaning non-striped, and they are found in hollow organs, blood vessels, and are used for eye dilation and contraction. The final type are your skeletal muscles. They are voluntary and are striated, and they also make up 40% of your body weight. The striations that we see on the skeletal muscle forms the basis of the sliding filament theory. Before we get into the sliding filament theory, let's go over the anatomy of a skeletal muscle. This is a skeletal muscle which is made up of a bundle of muscle fibres. These muscle fibres then contain tiny structures called myofibrils. When you look at the myofibrils under a microscope, you'll see a stripy pattern. These stripes are created by 2 proteins. The lighter stripe is actin and the darker stripe is myosin. And remember, actin is thin. This is why it is lighter, and because the myosin is thicker, this creates the darker stripes. The pattern created by the stripes are called sarcomere. This is the model that we're going to use. The thinner line is the actin and the thicker one is the myosin. In order for a muscle to contract, the muscles must shorten, except they don't shorten, they slide together, which is why it's called the sliding filament theory. If we look at the model closely, we'll be able to see it from a molecular level. This is a myosin head. There's usually lots of them, but we're going to focus on one to keep it easy. The myosin head starts off having ATP, or energy. This is then hydrolyzed, meaning that it's been broken down using water, and it's broken down into ADP and a phosphate. This now allows the myosin heads to bind to the actin. This causes it to lose the ADP and phosphate. Now the myosin heads slide the actin towards the midline, and the muscle is now contracted. To relax the muscle, we now need ATP again. This is why muscles remain stiff when someone dies, as they don't have energy to relax them again. Obviously, muscles need a break, which is where tropomyosin and troponin comes in, as they block the actin binding sites. But what about when we need our muscles again? Our neurons send a signal to the muscles, which then causes our muscles to release calcium. The calcium then breaks down the tropomyosin and the troponin, leaving the binding sites available again. This cycle can then repeat. Here are the steps. Pause here to take notes. The final thing we need to discuss are the functions of the musculoskeletal system. First up is blood production. This is mainly done in the long bones. These bones contain a spongy tissue called bone marrow, and this bone marrow then contains stem cells, which can differentiate into many different types of cells, including erythrocytes, which are red blood cells, and leukocytes, which are the white blood cells. It's also involved in mineral storage, including collagen and calcium, in the form of calcium phosphate, and it's involved in things like nerve conduction, muscle contraction, and blood clotting. It's also important to have enough vitamin D, as this affects the absorption of calcium. And finally, it's involved in movement. This is a diagram showing that if you contract your bicep, it moves the forearm upwards. You'll also notice that the tricep is relaxed, and this is because muscles work in antagonistic pairs. And that concludes this video. The next video will be on conditions that affect the musculoskeletal system.